Hi, welcome back. We're glad you're here today. We're going to be discussing more about the water cycle and precipitation and evaporation. Today, we're looking specifically about how we learn the weather from meteorologists and how they're able to tell the weather. We're going to be looking at a great book today. It's called The Shifting Nature of Weather. And it says right inside here, the weather can change rather suddenly. What are some clues you might notice when a severe storm is coming? What are some clues from the front of this cover? We see dark clouds coming. Maybe it's windy. Those are all good clues. Let's read this. It says, predicting weather. Have you ever noticed the weather can be sunny and warm one day, then rainy and cold the next? Temperatures can fluctuate from day to day, just as storms can move into an area very quickly, bringing rain or snow. Knowing what the weather will be like a few days in advance is very helpful because the weather is constantly fluctuating. And it says down here, did you know Alvin, Texas holds the American record for getting the most rain in a 24-hour period. It rained 43 inches in Alvin on July 25th through the 26th of 1979. Wow, that's a lot of rain in one 24-hour period. Scientists called meteorologists use special equipment to measure weather conditions. They study Earth's climate and weather forecast and use technology to make predictions or forecasts about the weather. And down here it says meteorologists use weather maps to predict the weather. Meteorologists predict the weather by analyzing patterns in air pressure and wind to determine if any storms are forming. If meteorologists see a storm forming, they can warn people in that area. They tell people if a dangerous hurricane or blizzard is approaching. This type of weather forecasting is critical for many reasons, especially because it helps people to plan ahead. Weather forecasts are important to some workers. Airport workers monitor the forecast to confirm if it is safe for airplanes to fly. Firefighters use warnings about dry weather conditions to anticipate occurrences of forest fires. And it says right here, air traffic controllers use weather forecasts to direct airplane traffic. They're directing airplane traffic right there. The history of weather forecasting. Long ago, people tried to forecast the weather by looking at the clouds. Weather forecasting was considerably more difficult then. In 1643, Evangelista Torrecida invented the first weather instrument, a barometer, to measure air pressure. It says over here, a hand-drawn map from 1872. In 1870, scientists who watched the skies began creating weather maps by recording the temperature, wind speed, wind direction, and air pressure. Then they transmitted this information to other scientists in Washington, D.C. Those scientists used the data to make weather maps by hand. It was a long, slow process. Usually by the time weather map was completed, the weather had changed. Oh, okay, so that's the weather map. They're putting the wind directions there and forecasting the weather. This was from 1872. That's how they did it then. Wow. The U.S. Army Signal Service was the first national weather service. Years later, the U.S. government instituted the Weather Bureau. Today, the National Weather Service is our country's weather center. The NWS uses advanced technology to forecast the weather. Meteorologists working for the NWS predict possible outcomes of weather patterns by analyzing cloud patterns, wind, and temperature. And it says down here, a modern satellite image showing water vapor in Earth's atmosphere. The first weather satellite was launched in 1960, transmitting the first pictures of Earth's atmosphere from space. Other new technologies have helped scientists learn more about how weather develops. And it says the first picture of Earth taken from a weather satellite, April 1st, 1960. And down here it says, why do you think improvements in satellite photography have increased the accuracy of weather forecasting? Wow, look at this old picture. I'm sure the new pictures are much easier to read the future weather, to predict it. Modern weather maps. Meteorologists can now take very accurate data readings with the advent of advanced equipment. These data readings help the meteorologist draw weather maps and predict what will happen in the atmosphere. So this is a new weather map, and down here it has its key. Two factors, wind direction and areas of high or low pressure, are often shown on weather maps. Those factors combine with wind speed tell how quickly a storm is moving and where it will descend. And it says over here, weather maps like this one help meteorologists predict the weather. And here we are right here in Tennessee. We're right there. Weather fronts. Cold fronts and warm fronts are two of the most important symbols shown on weather maps. A cold front is a large mass of cold air that can usher in a heavy storm. Cold air is denser than warm air, so it remains closer to the ground and moves in under a warm mass. And it says, a weather report on the radio says there's about a 1 in 4 chance that a cold front will move into your area. How could you write 1 in 4 as a decimal and as a fraction? Well, it would be 0.25 or 1/4. A warm front is a large mass of warm air that can result in rain or snow that lasts for days. A warm front rises up over a cold air mass, creating layers of clouds and causing cold air to retreat. Doppler radar. The Doppler radar can measure the direction and speed of a moving object. Storms and other kinds of severe weather form very quickly, so meteorologists use equipment such as Doppler radar to look for storm clouds. Here they are. That's the directions they move in. Radio waves are sent into the atmosphere, reflected off storm clouds, and then returned to the radio station. Meteorologists use computers to render images of the reflected radio waves. They study these images to see the motion of clouds. This kind of radio wave technology, or radar, helps meteorologists track hurricanes, tornadoes, and thunderstorms. So here they are bouncing the antenna signal, and that way they can read the clouds. Weather satellites. Functioning as cameras in the sky, satellites are devices that orbit Earth, carrying special instruments that take images of Earth to make maps and study the weather. Satellite images can reveal amazing detail on Earth's surface. Computers control the satellites in space, which remain stationary due to Earth's gravity. You might have observed satellite images of hurricanes on television. Tools aboard satellites help meteorologists predict storms long before they occur. Meteorologists use satellite images of clouds to look for storms. And it says down here, weather monitoring equipment on NASA's Earth orbiting system, Aqua satellite, helps scientists forecast the weather from space. So that's the name of that satellite, Aqua. Weather symbols. Weather forecasters describe cloud cover or the amount of sky covered by the clouds using terms such as clear, scattered clouds, partly cloudy, mostly cloudy, or overcast. On a weather map, symbols display the same information by maximizing available space. For example, look at the table below to see some cloud cover symbols. Oh, these are cool. And it says down here, if you saw the overcast symbol on today's weather map, how would you describe the likelihood of sunshine? So if we saw this symbol right down here, the bottom one, we would know it's not going to be very sunny today because it's overcast. This is how they predict how much cloud cover we have, using these symbols right here. Symbols are used to represent other information, such as wind speed and direction. Flags and lines are the symbols for wind. A full flag or pennant represents a wind speed of 50 knots. A long line means the wind is at 10 knots, and a half line means that it is at 5 knots. Knots is the unit of measure for wind speed. Let's look at these symbols. It says wind blowing from the west at 75 knots. Let's look at that first symbol. Isn't that interesting? Right down here, it says wind blowing from the south at 5 knots. Oh, that's a different symbol. Over here, it says calm winds. Do you see that one? And the top one, it says wind blowing from the northeast at 25 knots. Severe storms. The most common type of severe storm, a thunderstorm, forms is cumulus or cumulus clouds. The thunderstorms usually usher in heavy rains and strong winds. Some thunderstorms also produce hail. They can cause huge electric sparks called lightning, which heats the air and causes the noise called thunder. A thunderstorm forms when intense heat causes air to rise rapidly. A cloud forms and develops as more of the heated air rises. Large amounts of water and ice crystals form in the clouds. Soon the upwards draft of air cannot support the water, and the water falls to earth as rain. And earlier, those clouds were called cumulus. There we go. I messed that up a little bit. Sometimes the wind is a thunderstorm and develops rapidly and brings danger, leading to a tornado. A tornado is a violent whirling wind that moves across the ground in a narrow path. Tornadoes are classified by the damage they cause. The stronger the wind, the more damage a tornado can inflict. A tornado's size is not directly related to its intensity. Even small tornadoes can be very violent. Most tornadoes in the United States occur in Tornado Alley, an area in the Midwest and South. And this down here says the Fujita scale is used to report a tornado's intensity. The F scale number is assigned after a tornado has passed. And this is a chart of the different levels. Tornadoes are not the only severe windstorm. Hurricanes are also extremely dangerous. Hurricanes are very large, swirling storms with low pressure at the center. They form over tropical oceans near the equator. The strong winds of a hurricane stir up large waves in the ocean that can cause destruction and flooding to areas along the ocean shores. It's important for weather forecasters to keep people informed when and where hurricanes will hit. And it says this satellite photograph shows Hurricane Linda. And at the end here, we have a glossary. And these are the words we discussed today. The first one is barometer, a device for measuring air pressure. We then have forecast, which estimates about something that will happen. We have knot, K-N-O-T, and it's wind measurement that is approximately 1.15 stature nautical mile per hour. Meteorologist, a scientist who studies the weather, and radar, a radio device for finding distance and direction of objects. That was a great book about meteorology. I feel like I learned a lot too. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll have more that we're discussing with precipitation and evaporation in the water cycle. I look forward to seeing you then. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.